This week in Jamaica Now, why former Moravian Minister Rupert Clarke only got 8 years in prison for having sex with a minor. St. Thomas man asks judge to forego mitigation hearing after he's found guilty on all counts for the 2006 murder of 6 people.
No new taxes.
Finance Minister opens the budget debate to thunderous applause from the government side.
He reminds me of the black Englishman of colonial times,
black royalty.
The sort of who aspired to be sort of black royalty.
The controversy over black royalty, Peter Bunting under fire for lightening the now St. Andrew Northwest MP as a black Englishman. NCB delays the implementation of new banking fees, and The Distinguished, the Gleaner's Flair magazine recognizes 25 women of substance. I'm Damian Mitchell, and this is Jamaica Now. The president of the Moravian Church in Jamaica, the Reverend Phyllis Smith Seymour, says the denomination will be reaching out to the victims of the carnal abuse case involving former pastor Rupert Clarke. Clarke was on Thursday sentenced to 8 years in prison, almost 4 months after he pleaded guilty to having sex with 2 St. Elizabeth sisters under the age of 16 years. There have been numerous questions as to why the pastor was only sentenced to 8 years. The Sexual Offences Act prescribes up to life in prison and a minimum of 15 years for a person of trust found guilty of having sex with a person under the age of 16 years. 15 years is the maximum sentence prescribed for other offenders convicted of having sex with a minor. Prosecutor Adley Duncan explains that while in fact Clarke may be regarded as an adult in a position of trust, in law it might have been difficult for the prosecution to prove it in relation to the 2 sisters, since the 64-year-old Manchester minister was not their pastor. And this week, St. Thomas businessman Michael McLean was found guilty of the 2006 murder of 2 women and 4 children in the parish. The 7-member jury retired for almost 4 hours before returning the guilty verdict. McLean, through his attorney, Carlton Coleman, then asked the judge to forego his mitigation hearing and go straight to sentencing. But Justice Bertram Morrison turned down the request. He said that was not how the court operated and ordered sentencing for April 12. Meanwhile, the sister of one of the 6 family members slaughtered by McLean believes the St. Thomas businessman is a candidate for the death penalty. Prosecutors led evidence that McLean engineered a diabolical plan to carry out this blood sacrifice in what DPP Paula Lolin says was a case of obeah, sex, and the protection of the golden penis. The local church community is fine-tuning plans for a massive parade in the corporate area on October 27 this year. It's the counteraction to the annual Carnival Road March that commentators say contributes to havoc in Jamaica. The church march is months away, but event organizers Maranatha Ministries anticipate a mega turnout of thousands from every denomination. It's an idea copied from an event in Canada called Jesus in the City Toronto. The corporate area march in October will be called Jesus in the City Jamaica. Canadian pastor Ayana Solomon says during the Carnival Road marches, revelers unknowingly pay homage to Satan. Central Manchester MP Peter Bunting this week sought to fight off criticisms after likening the now St. Andrew Northwest MP Dr. Nigel Clarke as a black Englishman. Jamaica Labour Party leader Prime Minister Andrew Holness was among those who rejected Bunting's comments.
When I hear certain kind of talk, I realize that they're not only out of sync with what is happening in the society, but them have a bad mind. Them have a dirt mind. Because firstly, them start to grudge of the house. Now them are grudge of the education.
And this is the controversial comment made by Mr. Bunting in an interview with Dr. Garnet Roper.
What do you think are his kind of strengths or weaknesses, as you see it?
Well, I think Nigel is clearly somebody who is also, has outstanding academic achievement and qualifications. In a sense, he reminds me of the black Englishman of colonial times,
black royalty.
The sort of who aspired to be sort of black royalty. Somebody like Hugh Small's father, Justice Small, was spoken about in those ways. You had somebody like Ludlow Moody, Dr. Ludlow Moody, who was Norman Manley's brother-in-law, very much in that sort of mold, the
Esquire type.
The Esquire type, great English, British education, and sort of in a sense, mimicking the values and the affectations of the former colonial masters. So, you know, the sort of classical music, appreciation, etc. Very much, in a sense, culturally contrasting with the, you know, the sort of rural, down-to-earth ethos of Acacia Hill.
In Monday's by-election, the JLP's Dr. Nigel Clark polled 4,448 votes to beat the PNP's Keisha Hale, who got 2,812 votes. In another by-election on Monday, former school principal, the PNP's Jacqueline Lewis, polled 2,062 votes to retain the Norman Gardens division for the PNP over the JLP's Hedley Wilson, who received 124 votes. It was the refrain of Finance Minister Audley Shaw as he closed his budget presentation in the House of Representatives on Thursday. According to the Finance Minister, for the first time in 14 years, there is some relief for the Jamaican people. Shaw told his parliamentary colleagues that with increased compliance measures, tax revenue has been buoyant. The government is projecting to spend approximately $773.7 billion in the new fiscal year, which begins on April 1. This is $31.8 billion less than the $805.5 billion budgeted for the 2017-18 fiscal year. The opposition has said with revenue set to outperform by $5 billion and the primary surplus ahead of target, the government should consider tax cuts. But the private sector organization of Jamaica says it may be too soon to do so. The National Commercial Bank says it will not be implementing the recently announced fees that were scheduled to take effect on May 1. Commercial banks like NCB have been facing increased scrutiny over the imposition of fees costing customers billions of dollars a year. But only last week, NCB's president and CEO, Patrick Hilton, said bank fees are vital to the financial institution's daily operation and should remain an integral part of the competitive approach of the local banking sector. Former Army Chief Major General Anthony Anderson is to become the third retired Jamaica Defense Force head to be appointed police commissioner. Major General Anderson takes up the appointment on March 19 to succeed George Coelho, who has retired. Colonel Trevor McMillan was the first retired Army man to be appointed police chief. He was appointed in 1993, and in 2007 Rear Admiral Hadley Lewin became commissioner. Admiral Lewin says Major General Anderson will succeed in the post because he has the support of the political directorate that other Army men.
Observer Weekly Roundup. I am Paul Allen. Top stories in the news this week. New top cop. JTA government row deepens. Pastors to serve 8 years for sex with minor. Disappointing end to World Indoor Championship. The Police Service Commission on Tuesday announced the appointment of Major General Anthony Anderson as the 17th Commissioner of Police for the Jamaica Constabulary Force. Finance Minister Audley Shaw on Thursday announced that for the first time in 14 years, there is some relief for the Jamaican people, as the government has taken the decision that there will be no new taxes. And the National Works Agency earlier that day advised motorists to brace for traffic changes in the 3 miles area of St. Andrew as major technical work is to begin. The work is a precursor to plans to create 4 lanes along Hagley Park Road from 3 miles to Halfway Tree. In other news, the Jamaica Teachers Association said Wednesday that it has been informed by the Ministry of Finance and Planning that the government intends to pay the first year of the 2017 to 2019 wage offer with the March salaries, despite the fact that the teachers have rejected the recent 16% increase proposal. At the same time, the People's National Party, in expressing solidarity with the teachers, condemned what it described as dictatorial conduct of the Prime Minister Andrew Holness government, which it said is seeking to unilaterally circumvent the collective bargaining negotiation process with the teachers. And the Jamaica Labour Party's Nigel Clark was on Thursday sworn in as the new Member of Parliament for St. Andrew North Western, after defeating the People's National Party candidate Keisha Hills in Monday's by-election. On the crime scene, businessman Michael McLean was on Tuesday convicted of murdering his girlfriend and 5 members of her family, including 4 children, 12 years ago in St. Thomas. Days later, Moravian pastor Rupert Clark, who pleaded guilty late last year to having sex with 2 sisters under the age of consent, was sentenced to 8 years in jail on each charge. The sentences are to run concurrently. 3 men have been charged with the murder of a Chinese businessman who was shot dead on February 27 in Brownstown, St. Anne. And a woman who has been in custody since last week in relation to an alleged overseas employment scam that took place in Manchester was on Tuesday charged with 3 counts of obtaining money by false pretense and conspiracy to defraud. In sport, superstar batsman Chris Gayle hammered his 23rd one-day international 100 to lead the West Indies to victory in their opening World Cup qualifier against the United Arab Emirates on Tuesday. Days later, the West Indies inched closer to qualifying as they defeated Papua New Guinea by 6 wickets. Then Jamaica's Reggae Boys have been drawn to face neighbours the Cayman Islands, Bonaire, Suriname and El Salvador in the qualifying phase of the newly inaugurated CONCACAF Nations League, which begins in September. And the disqualification of the women's 4x400 meter relay team on Sunday highlighted a disappointing end to the 17th IAAF World Indoor Championships at Arena Birmingham for the Jamaican team, as they finished in 14th position on the medal table with 2 silver medals. In our Clovis tune this week, opposition spokesperson on national security Fitz Jackson is standing in front of a bulldozer labeled "Bank Fees Increase," which is about to crush customers. The driver yells, "Out of the way, Fitz Jackson." At the same time, a terrified Banking Services Act says he's going to be crushed. The National Commercial Bank on Monday said it would not implement its recently announced increase in fees that were scheduled to take effect on May 1. The announcement came after Jackson, who was unsuccessful with a bill seeking to amend the Banking Services Act, raised concern about the